Are you wondering why Yeats is famous in Ireland? We've come to a private Irish home to learn all about him. Let's go see what we're going to find out.
Our names come from the Gaelic. All of our town names, village names, county names, all come from the Gaelic and all reflect our prehistory, and you'll hear some of that as we go. Are Yeats buried?
Yes.
You were there, yeah. John Butler Yeats was studying to be a barrister at Trinity College in Dublin. He had a small private income, and he came to Sligo in 1862 to visit his school friends, Alfred and George Pollexfen, Pollexfen, an unusual name. And if he didn't know it already, he certainly realised it when he arrived, that their father, William Pollexfen, was the richest man in town. He owned 25 ocean-going ships at the height of his fortune, and he and his cousins, the Middletons, don't get excited, press, no relation to Kate or Pippa. Middleton is a very common name around here. He and his cousins, the Middletons, owned a big milling business. So they were very wealthy people. He would loosen something of this melancholy and make something of it. William Butler Yeats was born in 1865. He was the eldest of what was to be 4 surviving children. Susan and Elizabeth, known as Lily and Lolly in the family, were craftspeople, embroiderers, tapestry makers, and are very important in the foundation of the Irish arts and craft movement. And then Jack Butler Yeats is by far and away our most expensive and valuable and interesting artist. I haven't had enough Americans here yet, or there would be one on a wall somewhere. There isn't. But Jack Butler Yeats' paintings are magnificent, and he's our most important impressionist painter. And he said there was never anything he painted, but that there was something of Sligo in it. So they were to be the 4 surviving children. 2 children died in childhood, Anne in London as a 6-month-old, and Robert Corbett Yeats died here in Sligo while they were on holidays, and he is buried in Sligo in the Middleton family plot in St. John's Church, where his parents had married in Bohemian London in Bedford Park. They couldn't afford to give dinner parties, but John Butler Yeats was an incredibly witty and interesting conversationalist. And wherever he was to live, he spent the last 11 years of his life living in Manhattan. Wherever he lived, people gathered around just to be in his company and just to be there for the talk. And so the great and the good of London came for afternoon tea. It was all he could afford to serve. And he encouraged the kids to sit and listen. And when the great and the good, by which I mean people like William Morris, the founder of the arts and crafts movement, the great Victorian artists Millais and Rossetti and others, when they came to table, he encouraged the kids to sit and listen. And when they left, to agree or to disagree with what they'd heard the great minds talking about. Knowing John Butler Yeats as I think I do, I think he probably would have been happiest if they were disagreeing rather than being agreeable. But the great escape from the uncertainty of London was if they could get as far as Liverpool on the west coast of England, grandfather's passenger ships sailed in there 3 times a week. And so once they got back on board, coming back to what he called the land of heart's desire, once they got back on board, they were treated with all the deference due to the only grandchildren of the family at the time. Susan's brothers never married. The Pollexfen name died out in Ireland in that generation. And his sisters, her sisters didn't marry till much later. So they were made great fuss of. You can imagine, if any of you who are grandchildren or who remember grannies, how fussed we were. It was made over us. In Ireland, in Sligo, they were taken out picnicking. They were brought to Glencar Waterfall. They went back out to Ross's Point, which the Middleton family owned. They came to places like Dooney Rock and Slishwood that we'll hear of poems in just a few minutes. And so life was much different. It was certainly much more certain, albeit with the Old Testament, but nonetheless it was certain. And dinner was at 9. Our lunch was at 9 and dinner was at 4. 4 in the afternoon to save on candles before the light went out. So when Yeats then moved into his teenage years, he began to stay in the independent bachelor homes of his uncle George Pollexfen in a house on the Strand Hill Road, which still stands, or with his cousin Henry Middleton, who had a country house in Avena House, which still stands, in Ballysadare village. And in the summer months, they all had summer houses at Ross's Point, and so they moved there. In his teenage years, the men went to work in the office in the morning, and he was free to rove out into this landscape. Now, you've been here some days, and indeed you've been here all day today at least, And I'm sure Carol has talked to you and Dan has talked to you about Ireland's prehistory. You are in the richest part of the archaeological Neolithic history of Ireland. We have the largest number of passage tombs. Queen Maid's, the great tomb on the top of Knocknarea mountain opposite the hotel. Carramore Megalithic Cemetery is the second largest in the world. We, as I said, we have the largest number of passage tombs in Ireland are here in Sligo. These places, passage tombs, dolmens, and so on, are always places of bereavement, places where bodies were placed ritually. Never a full body, we never find a full skeleton ever. We may find burnt remains, cremated remains, or we may find what's called exorciated remains. The remains that were left in a very dry place for the body to wither away and just the skeleton to remain. That will happen within 2 years if you leave it in a secure place. When I say secure, away from bears and wolves and things. And so we have a vast number of these locations here in Sligo, from dolmens at their simplest, from cairns, and then from passage tombs. And it's a very, very rich heritage. Then the other thing we have are ring forts or raths, R-A-T-H-S, rath. A rath at its simplest is a ring fort. It's from here maybe to the hedge only in circumference. It's made of earth. It would have had a timber palisade around it. They date from about 1,000 years before Christ to 500 AD. And they're places of refuge. In times of bad weather, when there were still wolves and bears, the family and the cattle could retreat into their ring fort, their rath. And if there was cattle thieving, they didn't make war very much, but they cattle thieved. If there was cattle thieving going on, similarly they could retreat into these places and be secure. We have 1,800 ring forts or raths still in this county alone. Between here and the Rotary, where you turned off, there are 2 on the right-hand side as you go back. So they're everywhere in the landscape. These are places of habitation, places of refuge. The passage tombs, the older ones, date to 4,000 years before Christ. So this is a very, very ancient, special place. And man came here after the last ice age. He came here from southwest France and came right across Ireland to begin Irish civilization here in County Sligo, here within the amphitheatre of the mountains of Sligo Bay. When Yeats wandered out into the landscape, he inquired what were these things. He asked the people he met. The people he met weren't the Anglo-Irish aristocracy who didn't talk to anyone, but owned everything. We'll hear more about that later on. He didn't talk to the middle class, Protestant class, by which I mean the Anglicans, the Presbyterians, the Methodists, the Baptists, because they all worked very hard with the Protestant work ethic to run the whole mercantile activities between the landlords and the tenants on the estates. And the tenants on the estates, by definition, were Catholic Irish. Now, I'm Catholic. And we mediate with God very differently than grandfather and his Old Testament. We mediate with God through Eucharist and sacrament and mystery. And when Yeats asked my forebearers, or my Catholic forebearers, what's this, what's that, what's this other thing, he was told, oh, young fella, you stay very far away from any of those places. There's no knowing if you step into one of them where you might end up. Long before Harry Potter had platform knowledge, we had them all across County Sligo. He was told they are places of the Sheed, places of the fairy folk. They're enchanted places, and you shouldn't interfere with them or go near them. Hence, we still have 1,800 of them in the landscape, because nobody will build a house on the site or ring for it, or interfere with it, or put a road through it. Just isn't allowed. Or isn't. It's not even illegal, it's just nobody will do it because they're so fearful of the fairy folk. The fairy folk in my grandparents' time and my great-grandparents' time played a very real role in their lives. Anything malevolent that happened or that could happen were blamed on the fairy folk. So if the young calf died at this time of year, it had to be reared to be sold in the autumn to pay rent to the Anglo-Irish landlord. If the calf died, it was economic disaster, and the question was asked, what in the name of God did you do to upset the fairy folk? If the cow stopped giving creamy milk, butter couldn't be made. If butter couldn't be made, it had to be made to be sold because it was part of the economic model. And as you know, the native Irish lived on potatoes and buttermilk, which is what's left. If the cow stopped giving that creamy milk, what did you do to upset the fairy folk? If the fox took the chicken, what did you do to upset the fairy folk? And that's asked of the woman of the house, so that must give equality in this story. If the man of the house stayed out late because somebody had made a new batch of poaching 2 or 3 fields away, he could come home after dawn and blame the fairy folk. I left the house early, but as I came across the fields, they closed all the gates for me, and I couldn't get out till dawn when they went back to their sacred places. Yeats was obviously very taken by this, and one of the things that the fairy folk were most feared for was that if it became apparent as a child was growing up, and at that time it could only become apparent over time, if it became apparent that the child had special needs, it was thought that the fairy folk had stolen the child's mind. And the boy children were particularly susceptible to the charm of the fairy folk, and for that reason, boys were left in their petticoats until they were 7 years of age. When I was a kid coming here, I grew up in Dublin, but coming here to my mother's brother, who would be 98, we were still alive, but in the late 1950s, early 60s, he would say to myself and my brother Francis, "You behave yourselves, or I put you back in your petticoats." Lest you don't believe me, here's a photograph, I'll pass it around. Three boys on the Aran Islands, it's dated 1935. They have those lovely treaty caps that you all want to buy one of before you go back to the States. They have gansies on them, they have bare feet, and they're wearing skirts. Here's a painting from 1946. It was sold at auction a couple of years ago in Dublin, and it's of a family some of whom are still alive. You have a young shy mother, the grandfather with a newborn baby, the proud young father of the family, 2 pre-teen girls out here in front. This very view that we have from our table here, where dips the rocky highland of Sleuthwood in the lake, there lies a leafy island where flapping herons wake the drowsy water rats. There we've hid our fairy vats, full of berries and of reddest stolen cherries. Come away, O human child, to the waters of the wild, with a fairy hand in hand, for the world's more full of weeping than you can understand. Where the wandering water gushes from the hills above Glenparr, in pools among the rushes that scarce could bathe a star, we seek for slumbering trout, and whispering in their ears give them unquiet dreams, leaning softly out from ferns that drop their tears over the young streams. Come away, O human child, to the waters and the wild, with a fairy hand in hand, for the world's more full of weeping than ye can understand. Away with us he's going, the solemn-eyed. He'll hear no more the lowing of the calves on the warm hillside, or the kettle on the hob sing peace unto his breast, or see the brown mice bob round and round the opening chest. For he comes, the human child, to the waters and the wild, with a fairy hand in hand, from a world more full of weeping than he can understand. But the nice genius of Yeats, where dips the rocky highland of Sleuthwood in the lake. If you look out at the view again, and look to the right of the electrical pole, I had that put there by the service company, especially so as I could guide Americans to the view. Giving International Summer School, if any of you here are specialist writers in any way about literature or academia, talk to me about it later on. And it's a very significant International Summer School. It's in its 58th year this year, and I'm the chairperson of it. And some years ago, one of the lecturers, just in passing, said this poem was written 2 weeks after Yeats's grandmother died. And if you think of it as a happy granny poem, whether you're a happy granny yourself or you remember your happy granny, I think that's how it gets its inspiration, the fiddler of Dooney. When I play on my fiddle in Dooney, folk dance like a wave of the sea. My cousin is priest in Kilvarnet, my brother in Motherabwee. I passed my brother and cousin, they read in their books of prayer. I read in my book of songs I bought at the Sligo fair. When we come at the end of time to Peter sitting in state, he would smile on the 3 old spirits, but call me first through the gate. For the good are always the merry, save by an evil chance. And the merry love the fiddle, and the merry love to dance. And when the folk there spy me, they will all come up to me, with here is the fiddler of Dooney, and to dance like a wave of the sea. I think it's a happy granny poem. The lady who fattened him up over the summer, dressed him for the winter undoubtedly, and sent him back with 2 and 6pence in his pocket to London for the winter and the uncertainty of London. Now Christina and Carol, they seem like a nice crowd at both tables, and they're hungry. It's a small island, it's just behind the mountain that's down into the lake. It's only about 200 meters circumference and it's only about 200 metres offshore. Yeats had been reading the American philosopher Thoreau, and he thought to himself, as Thoreau got a full book out of his experience of living on Walton Pond in New England, 2 miles from Walton Village, he, Yeats, had a lake, Loch Gill, 7 miles long, 3 miles wide, filled with beautiful islands, and surely he should do that. And so he told Mary Battle, Henry Middleton's housekeeper, what he was going to do. She probably gave him a packed lunch, and he headed out and walked the 8 miles out along the shore. He came to the island at dusk and fell asleep on shore. When he woke in the morning, he thought of Mary Battle's breakfast, and he went home. The following year, he was back in London, and he was walking down Fleet Street, and he heard water tinkling in a little fountain in a shop window, and he was instantly struck with this huge sense of loneliness for the land of heart's desire. He said to his sister at that time that if he had but a sod of earth to hold from Sligo, might he not feel better? And so he wrote this, the late Hive, Innis Free. Innis is the Gaelic word for an island, and free, freig, is the Gaelic word for heather, so it's Heather Island. I will arise and go now and go to Innis Free, and a small cabin built there of clay and wattles made. 9 bean rows will I have there, a hive for the honey bee, and live alone in the bee loud glade. And I shall have some peace there, for peace comes dropping slow, dropping from the vales of the morning to where the cricket sings, their midnights all a glimmer, and noon a purple glow, and evening full of the linnet's wings. I will arise and go now, for always night and day I hear lake water lapping with low sounds by the shore. While I stand on the roadway or on the pavement's grey, I hear it in the deep heart's core. Lovely poem of longing. We're looking out, as I said, on Loch Gill. Loch Gill is a freshwater lake. The river leaves the lake just over here and runs down through the town. It's the shortest river in Ireland at the Garavogue. It's only about 2.5 miles long. Everything that we see in this view was owned by the one family, the Wynne family of Hazelwood House, and this was the Hazelwood estate. They had come to Ireland as Cromwellian planters in the 1640s, and by 1700 had become wealthy enough to buy Sligo town and everything that we see in this view. And they became wealthier still because as a town they were able to put tariffs on the port and on the bridges and all the mercantile activity, and they became very wealthy. They commissioned a German architect called Richard Cassel to build a home for them, a Hazelwood House, and it still stands in the trees across the river and is currently being majorly refurbished, which is very good. Richard Cassel went on to become the architect for Powerscourt House and Rusborough House in County Wicklow, to Castletown House in County Kildare. These are great mansions, huge houses on the outskirts of Dublin. And notably, he was the designer of Leinster House, the townhouse for the Dukes of Leinster, which today are our House of Parliament. One of the very first houses he completed in 1730 was Hazelwood House across the river. Everything that we see isn't the hand of God at all. It was all laid out and planned by the Wynne family in the 1760s. They planted and designed and laid out all the lovely mature trees and the Arcadian beauty that we see today. They did it with all the assurance and the arrogance of the Anglo-Irish that you could plant a tree and expect that your children might be still there in 300 years' time and know came into its full beauty. Handsome cab pulled up. There was a rather posh way of travelling a horse and trap. Yeats' family never took anything like that because they had no money to spend on it. They walked everywhere. And he was surprised when the lady stepped down and said to the cabby, "Wait for me, leave the meter running, I'll only be an hour." And when she turned around, he was astounded. She was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. She was tall, she was Anglo-French, so she had a nice sexy burr to her accent. She had high cheekbones, perfect skin. She wore great feathered hats, and she carried a live monkey on her shoulder. Her first monkey's name was Chaperone, so when people would say, "What in the name of God is that?" she could say, "That's my chaperone." And she had later what monkeys, one of them was called Ricorso, and our black dog that some of you were talking to outside is called after that one. She's shortened to Rico. And Yeats was astounded by this lady's beauty. and he fell head over heels in love with her and remained in love with her for the next 30 years. He said two things about that day. He said she'd all the delicacy and the beauty of apple blossom. And he also remarked that that was when the troubling of his life began. So he writes an early love poem for her. All of Yeats' love poetry is only for Maud Gonne. Nobody else in his life ever got love poetry from him, only Maud Gonne. And he writes a poem called The Song of Wandering Angus. Angus is the Celtic god of love. I went out to the hazelwood because a fire was in my head, and cut and peeled a hazel wand and hooked a berry to a thread. And when white moths were on the wing and moth-like stars were flickering out, I dropped the berry in a stream and caught a little silver trout. When I had laid it on the floor, I went to blow the fire aflame, but something rustled on the floor and someone called me by my name. It had become a glimmering girl with apple blossom in her hair, who called me by my name and ran and faded through the brightening air. Though I am old with wandering through hollow lands and hilly lands, I will find out where she has gone and kiss her lips and take her hands and walk among long dappled grass and pluck till times are done, the silver apples of the moon, the golden apples of the sun. Is there a woman here who wouldn't kill to have that written for her? If we look at it again for a moment, he's about 27 when he meets her, and he's already interested in spiritualism and things theosophical. Mary Battle, the housekeeper, had the second sight. She could tell when somebody in the family might die or when an important message might be coming. Himself and his uncle George Powitson had experimented with sending thoughts one to the other, one walking on the dunes at Ross's Point and the other walking on the beach, sending messages to each other. And so he's very open to all of this. And as I said, his father lost his faith while in Trinity and didn't send him to church very much or anything like that. So he's very open to it. Maud Gonne is still more deeply involved. At that time, there were major cults in London, Aleister Crowley, MacGregor Mathers, Madame Blavatsky, and people flocked to them in their hundreds and thousands to see tables moving and spirits appearing and emanations and all sorts of stuff. Maud is more involved than he is, so to be involved, he gets to be with her, he gets more and more involved. So if we look at the Song of Wandering Angus just for a moment, in the first two verses, he invokes earth and fire and wind and water, the elements of alchemy that are essential. And then, if you remember your Harry Potter again, curiously, some of you were too young to remember Harry Potter, which I find very disconcerting. And there's a generation who have read it for their grandchildren, and then there's a generation who slightly missed out on it. But don't record me saying that. But if you remember when he goes to Diagon Alley for him to buy his wand, the hazel wand is the most potent and most dangerous one in the store. And here we have Angus cutting and peeling a hazel wand and hooking a berry to a thread. And in that world, the notion of the daemon, something that would change its shape to suit its purpose, he catches a little silver trout, but when he looks around, it has become a glimmering girl with apple blossom in her hair. And so Yeats's emotional life was tied up in that hair for the next 30 years, really, as we hear as our story goes on. I'm often asked what's my favourite Yeats poem, and it's one that lots of Yeatsians don't even know. I mean, here I am as a Yeatsian, but I don't know all of the poems. Nobody does. There's a whole gamut of them, and you have your interests. But this poem is called The White Birds, when I can find it. It's a poem. I said to you that Yeats lived for the most part of the first 20 years of their lives living in London. But when he was 12, his father took them back to live in Hope, a suburb, a fishing village suburb on the north side of Dublin Bay. And they lived in Balscaddon Cottage there, it's still there, for 2 years. He came back to wind up what was left of his mortgaged estates in County Kildare and lose the last of his wealth. The kids remembered it especially and with fondness because it was the only time they saw their mother happy. She was back in a fishing village, a seafaring place. She could relate to boats coming and going, and they remembered it for that. Many years later, when she died, they erected a large brass plaque in her memory in St. John's Church, where she'd been baptised and christened and confirmed and married in Sligo. And it's a very large plaque, and it reads, "In memory of Susan Elizabeth Powitson Yeats, erected by her loving children," and no mention of her husband. He wasn't unfaithful, he was just feckless, and she had a tough life because of him. But they lived in Balscarton Cottage, and the kids remembered it for her being happy there. Yeats, on his part, and his father went into Dublin every day on the famous Go Tram, and he went to school in Harper Street in the high school, and his father went to a studio in off Stephen's Green to work. Incidentally, that high school is now out in the suburb of Rathgar. By coincidence, Maud lived in time for time as a child also in Hope. She and her sister Kathleen were placed in the care of a nanny. When their mother died, their father was a major in the British Army, and he had to go back on duty. And he placed them in a home, in a house in Hope, because it was good for their health. And the nanny actually stayed with Maud Gonn and died an old lady in Maud Gonn's house. So then, years later, Yeats and Maud Gonn were walking on Hope Head, he lamenting that he couldn't afford to marry her, and she lamenting that she didn't love him enough to really care. The great love of her life was a man called Lucien de Millevoye, who was a left-wing newspaper editor in Paris. His wife is a Catholic and wouldn't give him a divorce. A year after she met Yeats, and unknowns to Yeats, he's never to know this, I don't think, she had a child with Millevoye. She christened him George. And while she was away, 2 years later, George got very ill, and she fled back to Samoa, the village she lived in, and got there just in time to see him die. She had a mausoleum erected over his tomb. She took Millevoye some months later back to the tomb and conceived their daughter Iseult on the grave of their dead child George. And Iseult comes into our story later on again. At the end of that day on Hope Head, Maud did what Maud often did. She was demanding, and she said to Yeats, "Give me a poem for today." And they had been talking about how they'd like to come back, how they would like to be recreated, and she had said she wanted to come back as a seagull. "I would that we were, my beloved, by birds or the foam of the sea. We tire of the flame of the meteor before it can fade and flee. And the flame of the blue star of twilight hung low on the rim of the sky, as awaked in our hearts, my beloved, a sadness that may not die. A weariness comes from those dreamers, dew dappled the lily and rose. Ah, dream not of them, my beloved, the flame of the meteor that goes, or the flame of the blue star that lingers hung low in the fall of the dew. For I would we were changed to white birds on the wandering foam, I and you. I am haunted by numberless islands and many a Danaan shore, where time would surely forget us and sorrow come near us no more. Soon, far from the rose and the lily and fret of the flames would we be, where we only white birds, my beloved, white out on the foam of the sea." Nice one. Nice one. Okay, keep going. Autumn beauty, the woodland paths are dry. Under the October twilight, the water mirrors a still sky. Upon the brimming water, among the stones, are 59 swans. The 19th autumn has come upon me since I first made my count. I saw before I had well finished, all suddenly mount and scatter wheeling in great broken rings upon their clamorous wings. I have looked upon these brilliant creatures, and now my heart is sore. All's changed since I, hearing at twilight the first time on this shore, the bell beat of their wings above my head, trod with a lighter tread. Unwearied still, lover by lover, they paddle in the cold companionable streams or climb the air. Their hearts have not grown old. Passion or conquest, wander where they will, attend upon them still. But now they drift on the still water, mysterious, beautiful. Among what rushes will they build? By what lake's edge or pool to light men's eyes, when I awake someday to find they have flown away. This is a poet that's quite different from itself in. And Kiltartan Cross is the area in which Coole Park was, it's the parish. An Irish airman foresees his death. I know that I shall meet my fate somewhere among the clouds above. Those that I fight I do not hate. Those that I guard I do not love. My country is Kiltartan Cross. My countrymen, Kiltartan's poor. No likely end could bring them loss or leave them happier than before. Nor law nor duty bade me fight, nor public men nor cheering crowds. A lonely impulse of delight drove to this tumult in the clouds. I balanced all, brought all to mind. The years to come seemed waste of breath, a waste of breath the years behind, in balance with this life, this death. And this is a 20th century poet, really sharp, really good. The water widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the centre cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming. Hardly are those words out, when a vast image out of Spiritus Mundi troubles my sight somewhere in the sands of the desert. A shape with lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun, is moving its slow tides, while all around it wheel shadows of the indignant desert birds. The darkness drops again, but now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle. And what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. You can see how you journalists can have fun with that. Okay. He puts down the question, she writes it down, and depending on who she's channeling, whether it's Michael Robarts or Crazy Jane or the Bishop, depending on who's answering, the syntax changes and the grammar changes and it all changes. And so it really revitalizes his poetry, and he tries to synthesize what he's learned into a book called A Vision. A very difficult read. Every Yeatsian says they've read it, but they mean they've started it. They never say they've read it. And it's true of me. I'm on page 27. She did more than just that. She gave him 2 kids. Anne Yeats was an artist in her own right. She never married. She died about 20 years ago. Her father, the poet, had been the senator in our first government from 1923 until 1928, and his son, Michael Yeats, was a political senator in our government in the 1950s and 60s. When Ireland joined the European Union, he was one of the first designated members of the European Parliament for Ireland. Michael had 4 children. Katrina, the eldest, is patron of the International Summer School that I'm involved with, and of the Yeats Society, of which I'm a past president. And she is a concert harpist in an orchestra in Copenhagen. She's give or take my age, and she's at the moment selling up the family home in Dublin, and is probably good. That probably suggests she won't spend as much time in Denmark as she's always done. She had a sister, Siobhan, who lives in Germany and who's married and has kids. Another sister, Sheila, died some years ago, and they have one brother, Padraig Yeats, who is an engineer in Cleveland, Ohio. I don't get this, but I'm glad you do. And in his later years, Yeats was doing what Americans do by going to Florida. He was going to the south of France. And in 1938, he knew he was unwell, that he wouldn't last the winter, and he sent for Georgie to be with him. She wasn't always there. She in turn sent for Lady Dorothy Wellesley and Edith Shackleton Heald, both of whom had been squeezes of Yeats in his later years. On September the 4th, 1938, he finished what we think of as the last poem. It's called Under Ben Bowden. The last 2 stanzas go, Irish poets, learn your trade, sing whatever is well made. Scorn the sort now growing up, all out of shape from toe to top. Their unremembering hearts and heads, base-born prophets of base beds. Sing the peasantry and then hard-riding country gentlemen, the holiness of monks and after, porter drinkers' randy laughter. Sing the lords and ladies gay that were beaten into the clay through 7 heroic centuries. Cast your mind on other days, that we in coming days may be still the indomitable Irishry. Under bare Ben Bowden's head, in Drumcliff churchyard Yeats is laid. An ancestor was rector there long years ago. A church stands near, by the road an ancient cross. No marble, no conventional phrase. On limestone quarries near the spot, By his command, these words are cut. Cast a cold eye on life, on death, horseman pass by. He finished that on September the 4th, 1938, and although he was writing up until 2 days before his death, we think it was the last poem. He died on January the 29th, 1939, and he could foresee that the Second World War was coming. That's what that last poem was about, and he could see that there'd be a big fuss about his death, and he said to them, "Bury me here with no fuss in the south of France, and when the war is over, have me taken back to Sligo as I've asked for." And in the way that Ireland works, in 1948, our Secretary of State was none other than Sean MacBride, Maud Gonne's son, and he organised for the body to be exhumed and taken back by Irish naval corvette from Nice and the Mediterranean to Galway, and by road from Galway to Sligo. It was a great day. It was a very bad economic time. All of us left school at 14, well, not all of us, some of us got to the States and went to college, but almost, the majority of people simply there was no high school education, no free high school education. That came in 1966. That's the most pivotal moment of the 20th century in Ireland when the books are written, because that's what has us with PayPal and Google and all of that stuff that's there in Dublin now, because we started using our brains. But when I was a kid, coming to this farm, and my father had a business and we were going to be going to high school, we wanted to be going to college, my grandmother, who had 2 very successful sisters in Manhattan, would say, "You fellas work hard at school or you'll end up in London." Which was true. When the whole of Sligo, with not much education, understood something was happening, something of real importance, and the town closed for the day, and there's wonderful pictures of women pushing buggies down the street